Well, hi everyone. I'm Andy Asher. I'm editor at BloomerBoomer. Now, sleep studies show that with aging, many people have a harder time falling asleep. Well, for a lot of people, there's no surprise to that. And they also awaken more often during the night, averaging 3 or 4 awakenings every single night. Now, this may happen because we spend less time in deep REM sleep, and because we may be awakened by pain from an injury or an illness, or maybe a need to get up and go to the bathroom. Now, that information is all lifted from a really fascinating article by Dr. Patricia Salber, an MBA, the founder and editor-in-chief of the online publication Doctor Weighs In. She is also the CEO of Health Tech Hatch. It's a sister site that helps innovators tell their stories to the world. She is a physician executive who has worked in all aspects of healthcare, including practicing emergency physician, health plan executive, consultant to employers and other organizations. She is a board-certified internist and emergency physician who loves to write about just about anything that has to do with healthcare. So all the more reason to talk with her today. Now, at drweightsin.com, Dr. Salber reports sleep difficulties associated with normal aging. Older adults may also have medical or psychiatric illnesses that are associated with poor sleep, including depression, anxiety, chronic pulmonary disease, cardiovascular disease, and dementia. In a moment, we'll speak to Dr. Salber about tips for dealing with sleep impairment related to aging. I know there are nights I could definitely benefit from some of that. We'll be right back with that right after this. Well, Dr. Patricia Salber, who deals with sleep impairment related to aging and a lot of other issues that are really very interesting. And, this is so great to talk to you. I guess if I can call you Patricia, what got you started in all this?
Well, I started the blog, the Dr. Weighs in 2005. Which
wow, that was a while ago then.
That's right. It's when blogging was just starting. None of us knew what we were doing, but we had this, great new way to throw down our thoughts and put them out to the world in cyberspace. And the blog has kind of had an interesting history because every time I would get a really big job, the ones that pay, I would kind of be much less active on the blog, but I never let it go. And about 2 or 3 years ago, I thought, well, I think it would really be fun to try and see if I can make this into, really what I do full time and make it into a business. And so that's what I've been doing. I've learned a whole lot about things I never thought I would have to know, like HTML and SEM, which is, search engine marketing, and SEO, search engine optimization. So I've learned all that kind of stuff. And have had a lot of fun doing it, mainly because, as you said in the introduction, I really love everything that has to do with healthcare. There's nothing that touches on healthcare that I don't find fascinating. And having a blog like this, really, I consider myself more than a blog. I have a lot of media outlets, YouTube channel and so forth, but it really gives me an opportunity to stay involved in a lot of topics, in a much broader range of topics than when I was in practice.
Absolutely. And so for people who are seeking some background information to a particular issue that they might have, then you can visit your site. Is that your long view of it?
Yeah, well, what we've really been aiming for recently is to create posts that are chock full of current information that will remain relevant for a long period of time. And we have a lot of those kind of posts now. And we periodically go in and update the posts. So we may have written something in 2012, but we'll go in 2017, have either myself as the author or our other authors completely review it and put in the latest information. That way, when people come to our site, they know a couple of things. One, that the information will be current. Two, that the information is evidence-based, which is very important in the world that we're living today, where there's not only fake news, but fake science. We try and call that out when we can. And that's really our goal, to be a reliable source of evidence-based information about a broad range of health topics.
Well, we certainly know we need that, and the fascinating topic of sleep. I go back to my childhood when my mother would always ask me if I had a good night's sleep, and my partners have always asked me if I slept well, and that's still that, I think, plus weather seem like the most common questions sometimes that we contend with, which is not the weightiest things in the world, but it just goes to show you how important that is to us.
Yeah, well, it turns out as we've learned more and more about sleep, it has a huge importance in our life. It isn't just that we're, relaxing our conscious mind, but it's also an opportunity for the brain to kind of do a little housekeeping. That happens when we're asleep. And we know now that getting good sleep, maintaining good sleep is important for all sorts of aspects of our life, ranging from obesity to dementia. So even though we do tend to trivialize it a little bit, it's really important. And if you've ever had insomnia, not being able to go to sleep, then it brings it home really as how important it is and how horrible it is when you can't easily achieve it.
I guess when we deal with a lot of topics near and dear to us, and sleep is one that everyone has, it's near and dear to, you wonder about why it is that some people just can't ever sleep, and it's not a problem for others. And we listed off a few things, and you do in your article as well, but are there just some people who are more prone to having sleep issues and others who are not?
Well, I think that's true, but I do want to point out that anyone can have trouble with sleep. I was always, in my family, considered the one who could fall asleep anywhere. But 2 years ago, I tripped at the airport and broke my arm, my shoulder, and I got a mild case of PTSD after that, post-traumatic stress syndrome, which I don't think people know you can get just from falls and injuries. And I got a horrible case of insomnia. So I'd always been a really good sleeper. And then I went through about 3 or 4 months of not being able to sleep. So yes, some people have it more chronically than others, that's for sure. But in a way, nobody's immune. And we certainly know that as we get older, more and more and more of us are going to have some problems with getting sleep. We won't be sleeping like you described at the beginning when you were young. We're not going to be sleeping like babies, but there are a lot of things that you can do to improve your sleep quality.
That's fascinating. So issues as things that might happen in your life, we're all, if we're not already having trouble with sleep, it's a distinct possibility.
Yes, indeed.
So you, in your article, you break down some of the causes and then some of the remedies. Why don't we look at some of the causes of poor sleep and sleep problems, and then maybe we can look at some of the remedies.
Sure. Well, as I mentioned, just getting older is one of the causes of having disrupted sleep. And you went through the list of things that happen, that we wake up more often, we get less REM sleep, we actually change our circadian rhythm. So we find ourselves going to bed earlier at night and waking up earlier in the morning. Even my night owl husband in his younger days has fallen into that pattern as he's gotten older. And we're less satisfied with our sleep. So these are all changes that have to do with neurohormonal changes that drive it. But then in addition to the normal changes that we get with normal aging, people, as they get older, also get more medical problems. And we know that sleep disturbances come along with depression, anxiety, certain kinds of breathing problems like chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, heart failure is a big one that disrupts sleep, chronic pain, of course, and then some conditions known as restless leg syndrome and periodic leg movements, where you get involuntary movements of your legs or funny tingling feelings in your legs that keep you awake. And then finally, there's sleep apnea, which probably most people have heard about, but also a big sleep disruptor.
So is it a given that at one time or another in our lives, if we haven't already suffered from sleep problems, we will?
Well, I never like to say that everybody's going to get something, because that's not the case. But I think that we can count on it becoming more common as we get older, and we shouldn't be surprised by it.
Well, that makes sense, and I know that there are some remedies. My fiance, she happens to not sleep well. Now, my sense is that she just doesn't need as much sleep as other people, but what that causes in her is that she has a really restless night. So I don't know what you call that.
Well, there could be some anxiety involved in it. I actually have a relative who is the same way. When she can't sleep, she gets anxious about the fact that she can't sleep, and then she can't sleep because she's anxious. So you could create that kind of a dynamic. And it's one of the things that you really have to consciously work on breaking. And some of the hints that I have, or tips that I have, based on a review of the literature, what experts recommend for improving sleep, have to do with trying not to set up those kinds of situations and creating an atmosphere. For example, let's talk about your bedroom. Creating an atmosphere that's just totally sleep friendly. And people don't always think about it, but I have a bedroom that doesn't have any curtains on it. So I have to wear sleep shades at night, because light can wake you up and can make it harder for you to go back to sleep. That's part of our physiology. But then there are other things that are really important. Noise. If you live in an area where, say, you have a noisy neighbor, you need to do things to block out that noise, because it'll keep you awake. So think about things like white noise machines, or even getting some kind of noise canceling comfortable headset to wear. So those are other things that you can do. And then there's the bed itself. You want to be sure that your bed is the right firmness for you, and that your pillows, if you ever go to a hotel and you get the wrong pillow, you can, like those little hard as a rock pillows, you can really see how important it is that you have a pillow that's comfortable for you. So you need to try a bunch of different pillows out and figure out which one is the most comfortable for you. The same goes with your bedding. You want to make sure that your blankets aren't too heavy or too light, that they keep you warm enough but not too warm. And the same with your bedroom temperature. So you really have to play with all of those things. And then the last one that I like to talk about, because it happens to me, you remember the story of the princess and the pea? And she could feel the pea I could feel every wrinkle in my sheet, and it disturbs my sleep. And the problem is that I'm also a restless sleeper, so my sheets tend to get wrinkled. But there are remedies for that too. You can get suspenders that can tighten up the sheets so they don't get wrinkled when you toss and turn. So think of your bedroom as your sleep haven, and make it absolutely as sleep friendly as you can. That will go a long way to being sure that you can not only fall asleep, but stay asleep once you are able to go to sleep.
Well, you've solved a mystery in one sense for me, because the bedding companies and mattress companies do endless advertising and promotion on a good night's sleep, and I'm one of those people that, for the most part, a bed is a bed is a bed. But but you're really telling us that there's a lot more to it than that.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, for anybody who travels and ends up staying in hotel rooms or staying with relatives or whatever, but you're trying out different beds, it really becomes clear. Sometimes you go to a hotel room and you end up in a bed and you fall asleep and you don't wake up all night, and you haven't done that forever. And it really may have had to do with any number of things, but in particular, the comfort, the fit for you of that bed. And you want to recreate that at home, because that's, for most of us, where we sleep the most often.
Well, I would I would hate for my background in media with my colleagues to say that what I find puts me to sleep is listening to NPR, and so that works for me. But I guess you have to find out what's best for you.
Yeah, absolutely. For some people, it may be listening to meditation tapes. For other people, it may be listening to NPR. For other people, it may be, finding, a really boring book. My husband had a book that he could read about a page and a half before he fell asleep. It was the best sleep treatment ever. But you have to experiment and figure out what actually works for you.
Well, great, Patricia. I think you've touched upon some of the solutions. Maybe you can give us a kind of a synopsis on steps that someone might try if they're having problems with sleep.
Sure. Well, the first thing, I recommend you read my article, which you can find on the drwaysin.com. And I do have a number of other tips that you can use. All of them come from sleep experts, so there is some evidence behind it, whether they work or not for a general population. But again, I think the biggest advice that I can give is that you experiment with things and find out what works for you. And we didn't talk about it, but I think I'll throw in, because everybody knows that there are medications for sleep. They all have some kinds of side effects. So this is something that you really should talk to your doctor about, particularly if you take other kinds of medications. And then I want to throw in one word about melatonin, because a lot of people have used it. It doesn't work for everyone. And that may be physiologic, but it also may be because we know that supplements don't always have the ingredients that they say they have in them. So you have to be sure that if you're getting a melatonin supplement, that you go to a reliable distributor of the supplement, so you're more likely to have the actually have the melatonin in your supplement.
And then I guess my homespun advice that always has been told to me is drink a hot cup of tea. I don't know if it really works, but that's what I hear a lot.
Well, some people say tea. Of course, you want tea without caffeine. A lot of teas have caffeine in them, and you don't want to have caffeine at night. Some people say a hot cup of milk. I've heard people say a hot cup of water works for them. The one thing that we know doesn't work, which all of us indulge in, I think, too often, is having a nightcap or some form of alcohol before we go to bed, because although alcohol can help you fall asleep, right, you just could drift right off in the chair before you even get to bed, but it disrupts REM sleep. So although you fall asleep quicker, you will wake up in the middle of the night. So we call that kind of sleep junk sleep. It's not really the refreshing kind of sleep that we all are hoping we can get.
Well, what an issue and what a topic! Something that could go on forever. But your article really does a nice job of giving all of that information, and I really appreciate it. And people can find out more about you on your website. Anywhere else? Oh,
I'm also on LinkedIn. Actually, you can find me everywhere. I'm a big social media user.
Okay.
So check me out on Twitter at DocWaysIn. We have a Facebook page, which is facebook.com/DocWaysIn. And my personal LinkedIn account, of course, is Patricia Salber. So come over and see what we're up to.
Well, that's fantastic. Well, Patricia, thanks so much. I personally learned a lot, and I'm sure anybody else, we can always learn a thing or two more about sleep. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Andy.
We'll be right back right after this. Well, this is part of the Good Life Movement, a project of the BloomerBoomer publication where we bring stories and ideas from authors and thought leaders and inspirational people. And I hope you enjoyed today's show. Check us out on Facebook and visit us at bloomerboomer.com. Till next time, so long.